Be learning soon too, huh?
Yeah, I mean, when he was 2 years old, I was sitting on the bed one day crocheting, and he came over and he was just like, "Daddy, what you doing?" You know, and he just started rolling his hand through the yarn like this, because he saw the motion I was doing, so he was mimicking, but not necessarily with a needle.
Right.
He just picked up the yarn and he was doing this. So his moms came into the room and was like, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "I'm crocheting." Crocheting. Just like looking at his mom's going in this motion, man. So, yeah, man, it's like all kids need to see is an example of what's going on. I mean, like you being your authentic self, doing what you're doing, all they need to see is an example. So whether you're doing things that are beneficial or detrimental, it's gonna rub off.
That's interesting because in the Shetland Isles, you know, they're known for such fast knitters, and children pretend to knit at 4. They're not given needles. They just do the hand motion.
Exactly.
And then by the time they get the needles, they're
It's
off
like,
and running.
Yeah. Muscle memory, you know.
Wow. So it's rubbing
like
off.
yeah.
Well, that leads me to wonder, like, how did it start for you? You know, when the love that your son's getting, you know, like when did that start for you? And let's talk a little about the culture of, you know, crocheting, Dominica, the family. Like, when did you start going from this?
Right? Well, I probably didn't even go through that particular process, right? So I mean, I'm from Dominica. It's a beautiful Caribbean island, and the culture in Dominica is a culture of makers, as with the majority of Caribbean islands, right? Like, people actually make things from scratch. I grew up making everything from scratch. All our toys and whatnot that we had, we made them from scratch. Little trucks, little kites, little slingshots, like all of those things. Like, you literally had to go out in the woods, pick your wood, and make it. Like, you wasn't going to a store and be like, well, let me get this truck, right, and just purchase it and go. It's all about making, right? So I came up in that whole vibes and that dynamic and culture, and my mother and my aunts were masters of the fiber arts. My aunt in particular, she could look at patterns and recreate them. So I saw that growing up. I didn't necessarily thought to myself, well, okay, well, I'm going to end up doing this. I didn't necessarily envision or foresee this, but those are the different elements and aspects that rubbed off on me, you know? And my mother, just in my household, she made our clothes. She was a seamstress. She did needlepoint. She did embroidery. She crocheted, you know? She made the most amazing doilies, and like that's the first time I saw sculpture with yarn, because she used starch to starch the different swans and the different pieces. So yeah, so I'm just as a kid just seeing different things popping up off of the crochet doily in 3 dimension, you know. So all of those things just impressed on me, like, wow, that's amazing creativity going on right
Yeah, I've been recently thinking of revisiting that sugar water to make some hard objects, you know.
They were beautiful to me.
Yeah, in our house we would use them as candy dishes. That was the major. Everyone had a candy dish that was a folded, you know, a sculpted doily.
Yeah.
Well, wow. Well, then within that, you know, what would the no one stopped you apparently when you wanted to learn. And so, how did that play out with the dynamic of men crocheting?
Well, the thing is, in seeing my mother and my aunt crocheting, the majority of the people that I saw crocheting in Dominica or involved in the fiber arts per se were women. The weavers, all the different textiles like that were majority women, right? In the Rastafarian community, on the other hand, the majority of the people that were involved in the textiles were men. So I had that particular, I guess, example to see men involved in the fiber arts per se. And all the fishermen are fiber artists as well, because they make their nets. They make all those gigantic, intricate nets. It's a man and his sons sitting on the beach, just going about making their nets.
Fantastic.
And that's with nylon. So, you know, so you have all those different things that you see, and they rub off on you and they impress on you in different kinds of ways. Like, you might not even necessarily be able to pinpoint it, but years later, you'd be like, oh, wow, that kind of just like for example, this summer I'm teaching at the Zyx Institute. We have a learning institute where we do homeschooling and stuff like that. So I'm upstairs teaching, and one of the things that I did when I was a kid in summer camp flashed back on me. It's this, they call it like a God's eye.
Yeah.
Y'all remember that? So I remember just as a child making those things, not even putting that whole different little link
Wow,
together.
meanwhile the
And
seeds are getting planted.
years later, I'm now in a class teaching the kids and them, just showing them, seeing myself in them, processing how this whole thing works out and goes.
Wow,
You know what I
that's,
mean?
that's pretty
So,
powerful.
That particular dynamic now is going to be able to stretch for them. Who knows what they're going to do with that particular energy?
Excellent, excellent. Wow.
You know, so those are the things that just like kind of drove me. And I've always been somebody that loves beauty, right? So I love beautiful things. I love things that are beautiful, and I see beauty in different ways. And how it processes and translates to me, I try to express it, you know, in whatever way, shape, means possible. So.
Wow. Well, with those examples, you know, about how old were you when it led you to go from, you know, absorbing the energy to like creating? Was it like in your teenage years? So like, did you do other practice of the arts before?
Yes.
Like, how did you grow into that process? Were you doing anything else, poetry, other creative arts, and then said, wow, you know what, I really want to crochet?
Now, you know what's funny? I see myself as an artist, right? I love creating. So it doesn't necessarily matter the medium to me.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to create. I wanted to get whatever ideas in my head out in whatever way, shape, or form, whether it's painting, sculpting, any way, shape, or form. It just so happened that at the time when I picked up crochet, I had locks myself.
Ah, okay.
So I wanted to cover my hair, and I did not necessarily like the pieces that I saw out in the world.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I have a very, very particular style, just my own energy and dynamic. And the pieces that I saw were very generic. So you go outside, Jeffrey, John, Paul, Francis, Damien.
They all got red coat.
All of them want to have the same hat on their head. So I was like, well, that's not me. I needed to differentiate my whole dynamic.
How old were you about that time?
I was 17.
Okay.
I was 17, just getting back into my own vibes. And I remember asking my mom, I was like, so Ma, you can make me one of those dread hats? She was like, no. She's a master, right? But she only uses the very fine dread, which I am not even almost going to try to attempt to crochet with. You can't even see the hook. And she's there just... I'm like, Ma, you can't even see the hook. It's almost invisible. So she's like, no, I'm not, she doesn't deal with any kind of thicker yarns. It's like, she's amazed with me being able to do this, because she's like, I don't, this yarn is too
That's
thick.
so funny, because my mother was a professional seamstress and a writer, and she never made, wow, she's never made anything for me. Like, I've been sewing, I was thinking about this. I've been sewing since I was 11 years old. I had her customers at 14, and she never made one thing. I think since she made clothes for me when I was very small. I think after the 3rd grade, that was it. When I got my first sewing machine, she was like, "Whew, God, I don't have to do anything." You know, she can do it now. You know, and which was kind of good, because her tastes and mine in fabric and all were just diametrically opposed. Yeah. So, but to think about it, it spurred me to develop my own style as well, because I didn't want to look like the rest of the girls in the neighborhood, you know, because they all bought, you know, it was the thing to buy clothing, you know, making things then, you know, we elevate and relish makers now, but when I was growing up, it was about purchase power. You know, people who sewed and made things were considered poor. You know, if you had money, you spent it. But then you bought whatever was there, whereas when you know, I learned early, if you could create something, you know, all I needed was a sewing pattern, but the fabric choice, the thread choice, everything else was my own, yeah. So, you know, tell me further about what that was like as, you know, teenager.
I remember ruffling through my mother's patterns. Something about the paper and the artwork, how it was laid out, intrigued me. So I never necessarily learned how to make sewing patterns,
Right.
but something about the cuts, how it was laid out, I incorporate that into what I'm making my jackets,
Wow.
I'm making my clothing and whatnot. It's just the geometric shapes that are laid out, right? So I would translate that when I'm crocheting.
Wow, and you started that early at 17.
Yeah,
You started
just
making,
by looking at it.
making
Well,
your own patterns.
I didn't.
You started
My
with
first
your
hand
hats.
was definitely rough. My jacket was rough. It was, it was leaning. I didn't understand. I didn't understand the
Construction.
Yeah, I just didn't understand it. So I was just crocheting. It's like, okay, this is going in a circle. Okay, I didn't understand increasing, decreasing, where to increase, where to decrease. And all those different things matter. I remember a hat that I made for my cousin one time. It was like so many increases on the top. It looked like a mushroom top on the top of it. It was just looking like, it almost looked like a chef's hat. You know what I mean? A lot of my early work were
Organic.
very organic, but blueprints into what to do and what not to do.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So, and a lot of my work, I kept a lot of my early work so I could refer back to them. So these are like my blueprints.
That's
So it's
good.
like, all right, so this is what you do with this. This is what you not. This is how you achieve this. This is how you achieve that. You know what I mean? Based upon my little library I had of made pieces.
Yeah, a lot of times people make, as designers progress, they try to put the failures go in a box, so you present to everybody as like, you've just always been wonderful.
No, I want to see.
And then, you have a box at home of all the stuff. I keep everything
Yeah, I want to
that
see.
I've made. Then, sometimes I pull it out and I go like, wow, I'm so glad I improved.
Yeah. and quite honestly, there are things that I did back in the day when I go and I revisit it. It gives me a whole nother level of enlightenment for something that I'm doing now.
Okay.
It might be even something that I completely forgot that I made. I was digging in my storage when I was preparing to pull things out for this particular event. I was just going through my storage and just seeing things that I made years and years ago. I'm like, wow. It was like, when I make something, it's like a stream of thought runs through. So I would make the original, and then I have a million other versions of it in my head.
Wow.
Like immediately, like, this is A. People say this, and then I have a whole bunch of other ones that I see in my head. And very, might be small variations on each one, but I see a whole continuous line. Right?
Oh, wow. So it's kind of like a living, a sketchbook of garments.
Yes, all the time, right? So that's how I see it. And sometimes I don't get to completely fulfill that particular idea.
Right.
So I would make the prototype, and then that would be it.
Okay.
And then I move on to something else, whatever the case may be. But then when I go back and be like, wow, this here was supposed to have its own story, its own life going on here, its own, you know what I mean? In all kinds of different
Wow,
ways.
what was the reaction, when you started crocheting to be that young? Because other folks started looking at you, and did you see early that you would have something going on? Like you make a couple of pieces and people are like, wow, you should sell that.
That's
Even though you
literally-
may or may not feel that way, but at a certain point you're like, you know what? I think I need to investigate this further.
Yeah.
When did that start happening? Because you're also a graphic designer, so
Yes.
did that come first, or was that informed by crochet?
I think I always
How did
thought
that-
like a graphic designer. That's just my thought process. I think graphically. But as far as crochet and it being something I figured I could work with entrepreneurially,
Mhm.
it's when I went to City College. I was making hats for myself, and this African brother who was a hip-hop artist from Sierra Leone, he commissioned me. That was like my first commission, so to speak.
Right.
He was like, I want you to make me some hats for this video I'm going to do. I didn't necessarily even know what to charge him to make a hat for him. I didn't, none of those things were a part of my toolbox yet.
Right.
I didn't understand those dynamics, you know what I mean? So I did my due diligence, did some research, figured out what it would cost to make a hat, what the yarn cost, how much time it would take. And there are 1,000,001 different formulas out there as to like how to break down your pricing and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's all arbitrary. You know, it's all arbitrary. It's like people just make up stuff.
Okay.
You know, a lot of times they gauge like, oh, do you like it? You like it a lot? You like it that much?
They keep going, the price keeps going up as they keep liking it, right?
If you like it this much, then
This should be, I'll charge that much, you know?
it's crazy.
Wow,
So-
how did it work out? And have you,
It was cool, man. That was like the first little situation where my work was featured, quote unquote. You know what I
Okay.
mean? So I didn't even know that was like a thing. But as I went on in progress within the whole media and industry of things, and I saw that that's like a thing. There's stylists that come in and pull your work, and there's budgets that's put aside for styling, and blase, blase, blase. There's a whole world.
so you entered the
Open
fashion world after
Yeah.
college?
Well, it was right around 2000, right around 2000, 2001.
Okay.
The first major, after the brother from City College, after I left City College, the first major thing that placement that I got in the industry was with the incomparable Erykah Badu. I know everybody knows this lady. Yeah, the first work that I did majorly was her Bag Lady video.
Ah,
So I
okay.
did all the pieces for a Bag Lady video, and that was the first time I got to be in that type of environment, right? So it's a big set. It's a lot of moving pieces. Like there are deadlines. There's just
Well, you got baptized by fire.
yeah, like immediately. And I didn't even necessarily know that's what it was, but I hit the ground running. It's like a friend of mine who used to make her pieces was pregnant at the time. Erykah asked my homegirl, like, do you know anybody that crochets? She referred me, and I went over there with a bag of hats, and then the rest was history.
Wow.
She pulled a bunch of things, and that was like a lot of my first looks, quote unquote, within the industry was with Erykah. Did magazine covers and all kinds of different videos and award shows and blah, 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 blah. She introduced me to like a bunch of her friends that were working in that particular arena at the time, like the whole neo soul movement, right? So I did work for Common and Music Soul
Wow,
Child.
I used to wonder where all of her hats and boleros and crocheted work came from.
That was on me at the time. That was like me working my fingers to the bone. And what time is it? 12:30? 2:30?
AM probably, right?
It's
AM.
wee hours of the morning. Wee hours, which is very good creative time. It's very still and quiet. You know what I mean? All the little creative guys be coming out the woodwork. So I'm not mad at that time, you know what I mean? But
I'm hoping
that
you
was my world.
caught up on sleep since then.
no. I haven't caught up on sleep since then. Yeah,
Okay.
it continues to go. I get my sleep, I get my rest, because that's important, you know what I mean? And I let my body tell me when to rest. Though.
Okay.
You know, be like, yo, go sleep.
My body must tell me to rest a lot because
Yeah.
looking around and finding like it was
You have to listen. Yeah, you have to listen. It's like, especially those pieces in the back, those are like some of my early pieces that I made.
Yes, tell us
And then
about the timeline.
You can see a lot of single crochet work for all the people that stitch away, right? So single crochet for the people who don't know is a very dense pattern, and it takes forever and a day to do. It takes a long time, right? So anything that you see with single crochet, y'all just know that person put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into the situation, you know? And these pieces were like very, these were like my first full garments that I made. Like I was able to get an idea that I had in my head and was able to like bring it to life. You know, that's when I was running around with Erykah and them, and I was like, well, I gotta match y'all crazy, y'all over there doing it extracurricular. I gotta be extracurricular too. So this one, that one, this was like my whole little extracurricular days when I was running around with these guys and just presenting the works to the world, you know what I mean? And it was always good for me to see people's reaction. I've gotten to lots of conversations with people telling me that, you know, so your grandmother made that for you? Nothing wrong with that, but no, she didn't. I actually made it. It's like, you lying.
I get that a
I
lot.
was there when I made it. So I know I'm not lying, but hey, I'm not gonna argue with you. You know what I mean? I've had a lot of those conversations, and I've had. It's just been a beautiful experience all the way around in the land of fiber.
Well, speaking of the land of fiber, I mean, you're handling garments, and I'm interested to know, like, what the construction process is. Do you, because people like Erica, they're moving at 90 miles an hour at entertainments. Do you get to measure them, or did you, what's your construction, process with them, and how does how does that work?
It's different with different individuals. The relationship I had with Erica was very free-flowing. She a Piscean as well, so real whimsical, creative mindset, and she gave me creative free reign to just go and just.
So you could just look at her.
Yeah, it's just like, well, we'd have sit-down meetings and talk about what the concepts were, and then this is like just.
Okay, did you have to measure?
Yeah. I got her measurements. And then after that's in the file, after you have the measurements we have in the file, that's it.
Yeah, I'm thinking of that. I'm mentioning that because I'm also thinking about your aunt who was freeform, who could look. I was wondering how much of that became inherited in yourself, being able to look at someone.
Yeah, I definitely I'm like a split between my mother and my aunt's creative. Yeah, I definitely know that for a fact because I create my own patterns. Like all these pieces that I've made in here were like literally almost like a freestyle rap. And I was freestyling all of them. I didn't know that they were going to come out looking like this when I started it.
Really?
No.
So you don't start out like with a sketch of people. That's an interesting departure from the graphic design work, which working in Illustrator is very precise and extract.
I work the same way in Illustrator. That's interesting. So it must be folds in front of me. I don't necessarily would have like okay, it's gonna look like this at the end.
Okay.
It kind of like unfolds organically. Like I might have an idea of where it's going, but then it shifts, and it might shift this way and then shift back this way. And sometimes I might make a quote-unquote mistake that like makes me have to take out something and put back something in a different type of way,
So then where does it start for you? Does it start with the color or the garment?
Yes, it starts with the color. The color is the initial burst of inspiration. So after the color is like, I tell that to anybody that I'm creating a piece for as well. Tell me what color you want, because you're going to be the one that's going to be wearing the piece. So that color has to resonate with you first and foremost. Like I could create in any color palette. Like that's what I do. I love colors. But what's going to resonate with you? What do you want to put in your body and wake up and be like, yes, I'm in my armor now. I got my crochet armor on. I'm about to go ahead and hit the streets. Let them know what time it is.
Now, considering, I also do a lot of client work, and I find that a lot of clients don't know what they want. They see that, like, well, you look great, but, well, what do you want to wake up with? Yeah, well, everything in my house is great. So then so considering a lot of clients don't know they want, how are you able to generate, with that kind of a challenge of someone who's like, I don't know what I want, really, I just want a jacket.
Yeah, honest conversations, man. Just, let's go out and sit down and have a cup of tea or something. Go get a slice of pizza or something. It's gonna come out.
Okay, so just talk to them.
Just honest conversation. It's gonna come out. Like something's gonna spark, trigger from their childhood, maybe be like, I really like burgundy. There you go. Right, there you go. You got a burgundy jacket. You know what I mean? So you'd be like, just paying attention and listen with an open ear, open heart. Then it's gonna come. So that's what I employ. And I've dealt with many different types of individuals over the years concerning fiber work and whatnot, and a lot of times they would want the piece that I have on or something.
Exactly. Well, that's easy. I don't have to think about anything. I know that. Yeah. But what if that doesn't work for them?
Exactly. Like it might not work for them. It it just might not work.
Well, you have a way of explaining to them that they can't have like this jacket, you know, but have to make something for you that'll really look good.
I'm gonna make you your jacket. I'm gonna create your magic for you. You know what I mean?
You know, well, with that magic, a lot of it, has made its way into menswear. And I was wondering, like, what is the reaction, you know, from men in particular? Because your jackets have a very masculine look, and it defies the typical notion that crochet is grandma, it's women, and, you know, are guys hesitant? It's like there's a desire and a hesitancy as well. Like, wow, I want that, but it's crochet.
Yeah.
But when you look at your work, the crochet, it's like secondary.
Yeah. I remember one time I was in the Bronx crocheting at the Puerto Rican Day Parade.
Oh,
I'm sitting in the car. It was like, that was early. I was probably like 20 years old or something like that. I went up there with this lady I was dealing with. She was like, yeah, let's go to the Bronx, Puerto Rican Day Parade. All right. I was like,
you started to crochet, right?
She went to go get us some food, so I'm sitting in the car, bored as hell. I was like, I got a hat there I gotta finish. I might as well finish it. So I'm sitting in the car, I'm crocheting this hat. So I was like, you know, people walking back and forth. So then this young Hispanic brother walked past. And he gave off this whole energy like, yo, there's no way that you should be in the car sitting there crocheting. I was so
Puerto Rican Day Parade.
It was messing with him, like, it was like, and then he was like, he started going into the whole maricon and his whole little thing. So I was like, it messes with people, like, they don't necessarily know how to process it. You know what I mean? It's like, but I don't particularly
care.
Not in that type of way. Like, I don't, not to say that I don't care, but it doesn't necessarily sway me from what I'm doing. It actually emboldens me. It makes me want to present it even more. Like, let me show you something different.
Yes, excellent. Excellent.
Go to this side of the fence. Let me show you something. You know what I mean? And then it breaks down a lot, man. I've broken down a lot of barriers between men with the whole crochet dynamic. Because my general circle of men are they're from the hood. They a rough set of individuals that live rough lives. You know what I mean? So
Macho.
yeah, real. It's like everything is riding on their bravado. So they can't let that crack or break or seem to be soft in any kind of way. And they would walk by and they would see me crochet and be like, "Oh, that's hard right there, bro. That's hard." So it's like right now, I work out of a music studio. I'll be down there crocheting sometimes, and the people in them that's walking back and forth, you can see them trying to like look into the little room where I'm there crocheting and be like, what's going on in there? This is like some of the hardest Brooklyn individuals. They're like, what's going on in there? I'm like, I'm interested, I'm intrigued, but I'm too hard. I gotta escape.
It's so funny with the hardness. The softness is that everyone has a memory of someone in their household who was crocheting or making something. You know, I can be on the train knitting, and you know there'll be some guy that normally like could just scare every woman in this room, you know, and staring at me like, you know, and I'm like just knitting along, and then it's like, wow, you know. My mom's used to do that. You know, and I'm like, so you make sweaters? Yes, and if you want one, ask your mom. Well, no, the next thing, no, I'm not going to. But it's amazing how, you know, a handcraft, like if there's someone everywhere who has, and it provokes a war memory. You never run into anyone that said that they hated, you know, with their aunt, mom, grandmother, grandfather, anyone who was working on something, they never have a bad, you know, memory of it.
That's a fact.
You know, but you know, so taking that into Fashion Week, where you have now a number of men walking down a runway, let's say Brooklyn Fashion Week, like how did that amplify the audience? Like what was your first Fashion Week runway show like?
I mean, it was amazing, to be honest, you know, and it's like people were coming up to me and telling me all kinds of things about like, yo, you need to be in Paris, and you need to be in Milan, all these other places, like, yo, this would kill over there, oh my goodness. I'm like, all right, well, you're gonna get me this plane ticket? Like, what's going on? Like, what's going on? You know, but it was amazing, man. Like, and the first one I did was with Rick Davey, who's the founder of Brooklyn Fashion Week.
Mm-hmm.
That was many years ago, like at least 5 years ago.
How many garments did you put in?
I think I showed 25 looks.
Oh my God, when did you
All men.
Were they looks you already had, or were you like up at like 2 in the morning?
A combination of, right? Because a friend of mine told me years ago, he's also an artist, he's a visual artist, he paints and draws and whatnot, and he just knew me out in the world creating my pieces, and he told me something that stuck with me. He was like, you're going to have to go into isolation for a while and create a body of work.
Oh, I
and
heard
then you'll
that
be
one.
able to
That's
go out
from
into
terror
the
in my
world.
heart.
Yeah, you know, it was like, that resonated, that stayed
Yes.
with me because it only made sense. It only made sense. And when I made that step, that's when I was able to expand and branch out in a different kind of way. Now I could do fashion shows all over the place, this college, that college, out of state over there, because now I have a body of work.
And what's good about your body of work is that it doesn't date.
Right.
Because
That's
one
beautiful.
of the challenges in fashion is, and it's becoming an increasing challenge, is to stay on trend. What I enjoy about your work is that since you're not coming from this whole directive of on trend, you produce work that actually doesn't date.
Exactly.
Which
That's definitely
is just
been,
wonderful.
That's been a conscious effort of mine. So, in all of my art endeavors or artistic expressions, I always aim to make pieces that are timeless, right? So you could put on a Bob Marley song right now and it's gonna resonate the same way like he did it 50, 20 years ago, however many years ago you made the music. That is always the energy that I've always wanted to present with anything that I do. In my artwork, my music, my poetry. I always wanted it to be a timeless piece, so you can hear it 50 years from now and it still hits you with the same impact. This blue piece right here, this white with the red, yellow, and green, those pieces are 20 years old.
Wow.
These pieces are 20 years old. Like when you said that, it just hit me, man. I had to just sit back for a second and be like, when did I make that? When you just said the whole time thing, I was like, wow, that was like 99. 2000.
Wow.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, but you know, when you're prolific, I mean, I make a lot of large-scale textiles, and I forget, you know, when people are like, oh, did you make the sweater you have on? I have to remember, you know, because I make so much, you make so much stuff.
Oh yeah, I did.
You kind of forget about it. Which leads me to the materials in your process, because the materials in your process, you know, once again, you know, we know that in the knitting and creative community, everybody also wants to keep up with the latest yarn and colors. And then, you know, there are the purists who want to deal with wool. Like, I don't work in acrylic yarn. I only work with cashmere. I only do this. I only do that. And they also, I guess, are the same people that make maybe like one garment every 2 years. You know, because if you're waiting for everything to be perfect, well, then it never comes. But you elevate the yarns that through your process of design, and I'd like to know more about that, considering there's this big discussion about purity in materials and using you know, acrylic yarn, and everyone's, you know, let's talk about the elevation of your materials and how you feel about those kind of comments.
So now, material, I love recyclable materials, right? Now, my favorite weight of yarn to work with is sport weight. So,
God bless your hands.
yeah. So if you have any material in that weight, I am happy. I'm so happy. Any material across the board, but with that weight. That being said, the majority of the pieces that are in here right now are all made out of acrylic sport weight, right? I intentionally jumped into the acrylic bag because of the shade I was seeing out there in the world on that particular material. I was just trying to figure it out. Even before I was doing stuff on this level, I was just like, why they mad at the yarn? I didn't understand it. I was literally just trying to figure it out.
The most neutral material on the planet
Why
to
you
make
mad?
such an argument.
So, you know, I never really got it, but I said to myself like, well, you know, I'm gonna create with this particular palette. And another thing that I like about acrylic, the colors are very rich.
That's true.
Have very rich colors. So just like a painter, I'm like, I wanted to paint with the richest set of colors I could get. And then when I want to get muted, then, you know, I could go get some muted colors. But initially, like acrylics, and the colors are popping. And then you throw it in the laundry after it gets dirty, and the colors come right back. Pop again.
Yeah, and nothing
Come
much
right back.
happens, unlike the number of sweaters I've shrunk.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So,
Pillows.
you know, acrylic just like, if you don't care for it, then you're gonna get a bunch of the little pill balls. You know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I had a magical machine, sister by the name of Victoria got me. That was just the best pill ball remover I've ever had in my life. It was electric. You plug that bad boy in the wall. I was like, it's like a vacuum cleaner.
Fantastic.
And then I lost it, and I haven't found one that good ever since. Every other one I found has been like a cheapish, less powerful version.
Yeah. I just wound up using a shaving razor because pills actually do not destroy the integrity of the fabric itself. It's just excess hairs that just pop up, and it's just an aesthetic problem. It's no reason to, you know, to get upset.
Yep, it's just aesthetics. People be like, just aesthetics. That's literally it. Yeah.
So about the business, is the majority of your clientele custom work?
Majority.
Or do you also do, you know, sell to shops or? Let's talk about what kind of business that you have.
I used to sell to shops and do consignment work and cover small run orders with different
Okay.
boutiques, specialty boutiques.
Were they things that, were they items that the boutiques themselves would request?
Yeah, I had a little catalog. I
Okay.
used to bring that around to the different boutiques and, you know, get certain things and then pick whatever they wanted, and then I would create for those boutiques.
Okay.
I haven't been in the boutique arena in a couple of years now.
What was the challenge in terms of selling to boutiques?
The same thing that you were talking about with the color palettes and the projection of this date by that date type of vibes, and that's not necessarily how I created.
They were regimented in terms of their demands and.
Yeah, and I understood it was a good lesson to learn.
Yes.
So I appreciate it to the fullest, but it's not necessarily what I wanted to do with my artwork. So, you know, I kept a few things at certain places and then slowly dissolved those contracts after a while, you know?
Which is interesting because a lot of folks think that, you know, success lies in, you know, being in every store in the city and yeah, they, you know, well, along with that though comes like, you know, the demands of the schedule. You know, there's a lot of folks who are budding designers that, you know, well, I want to be in this store, I want to be in that store, I want to be in this store, and they don't realize that there's a fashion season. Stores may have their own season that doesn't coexist, and also it doesn't mean you're going to get rich because of the way store shops pay, you know.
Exactly. The consignment game is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that requires, well, the consignment thing is interesting because for a lot of stores that don't want to really buy, you know, or don't have the money to buy, you know, I used to do consignment when I felt I wanted to test out a few things, but then if it's sold out, then, you know, the option is for you to purchase it. And if you didn't want to purchase it, then, you know, I have to move on. And people feel that you can't really make money doing, you know, custom work, but now we're actually in a climate where everything is bespoke. The same, you know, the same stores that would refuse to deal with you if you were doing custom, now everything is build a sweater, build this, build that, you know, bespoke work. So it must be shining for you pretty much right about now, when everyone wants custom work.
It's a cycle, man. It's a cycle. It's like you just gotta like understand cycles of life. You know what I mean? And don't. If at any given time you want to go ahead and take advantage of whatever the scenario is, then, you know, go for it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, just be true to yourself. You know what I mean? Just be true to yourself. If that's what you want to do, you can go ahead and knock yourself out. I ain't mad at you. You know?
Well, when you're designing, one of the things I want to particularly ask about is, you know, since most people stop at crochet, you take it further by adding metal, leather, you know, you embellish, but you embellish in a way that it doesn't look corny.
Yeah.
You know, some folks, you know, want to throw, you know, just the kitchen sink all over everything, and then, you know, you wind up with something that, you know, used to resemble a garment.
Right.
And you don't know what it is anymore, but you know, with all the exuberant coloring and the materials, it still looks very, very controlled. There's a few pieces, the one in the corner here with the leather and the zippers, that I just think is fantastic. And so when did you decide that, you know, it wasn't enough just to use color? And then now you want to use embellishment, and let's just talk about, like, you know, how that works out for you. When, you know, once you crochet, it's like, where does it stop and then it goes? Because there's thinking going on there that's for an outcome. You know, it's not just flowing to me anymore. It looks controlled.
You have to definitely learn to edit. You have to learn to edit. You have to know when to say when, and after that, just be free. But you got to know when to say when. It's like I might make a certain part of a garment and then put it down, go away from it for a while, and then come back to it and let it talk to me. Like that blue jacket in the corner with the orange sleeves.
Yes.
I didn't know I was gonna put those chevrons on the sleeves.
Okay.
I didn't know that when I was making the body of the jacket.
Right.
I did not necessarily know that. But I had to like make the body, put that down, go do whatever else in the world, and then come back, and then that spoke to me then, and I was like, well, this makes sense to put this here. Okay. And then it just like makes that whole, you know what I mean? But I didn't know that just off the rip. I wasn't like, all right, I'm gonna make a blue with blue and then orange. It's gonna have these things on the sleeves.
Okay.
That's not like my problem. It doesn't work like that in my head at all. Like those things unfold. Like they literally unfold as they come in. I might have a general idea, and the general idea would be mainly based around shape more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I would have the shape down, and the mathematics. I always keep my mathematics tight. Like if you have your numbers in them tight, then you know you could basically wild out. Like after you have your math tight. So I make sure my math is tight. So that's why everything is like symmetrical. You could like split things up, even left, even right, you know, because the numbers, meticulous with the numbers.
So your math informs the shapes of the garment, like I'm going to have maybe like 20 stitches will be this big, and this is, and 20 rows will do this. And
exactly.
So your math informs shaping.
And then even sometimes it's happening while I'm making and shaping, you know what I mean? So that's one thing I would always say about crochet or knitters, weavers that make garments with their craft. You actually are creating the fabric and designing the piece and shaping the piece all in one fell swoop. So kudos, you know. I'm always like, that's an amazing thing.
Well, what's really amazing is how much stuff everyone who's walked in here is just kind of like, wow. Yeah. So considering the amount of work, how many, and that it flows, how many pieces do you have going at one time? Because you walk away from one, there may be, should there be another piece there? You know, 'cause that means that there's whole conversations going on between you and all this clothing. How many pieces do you work on at the same time?
It might be clothing, but it might be other things. Right?
Okay.
So I might put down some yarn and I go pick up some leather. Put down the leather, go pick up some brass.
What other mediums are you then? What are you working
so you know, I make jewelry as well. I make leather goods. You know, so it's definitely all the different creative concepts just converge together when I'm creating. And if it calls for, like this one has hemp on it. Like this blue guy right here got hemp going on.
Okay.
I mean, this is ostrich leather on this one.
Right.
So, you know, like different things. This one has, you know, regular cow leather. So different things jump in my head. It might be based upon something that I recently saw, something that I saw a while ago, a combination of things, you know. And I like to use color palettes of shoes to create my jackets.
That's interesting.
You know, and that's like one of the things that I do is a whole concept that I have called Just for Kicks. And the whole Just for Kicks concept is every year on my birthday I create a jacket for myself after I've purchased the sneakers that I like.
So is that partially wearing the shoes that you're doing? Because these booties and this when I first saw this, I was just blown away.
Yes.
Because I never see shoes with any kind of, knitting or, UGG had some crochet boots, right? Remember, and you see where those went.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they had a moment. But it wasn't this moment. This is just spectacular.
Nah, like I don't even.
What brought that on?
This wouldn't even necessarily come to market per se, in their arena. Like if I was in that arena, this would be in the market.
And I'd have a pair.
Yeah, I was like, it's beautiful. I was like, even when I made it, I was like, that's a beautiful piece right there. You know, it's like it's a combination of, and I'm big into animation and steampunk and all that different type of stuff. So all those different things just like influence my ideas. Like that, this shoe came from that whole Mary Poppins meets a steampunker meets some crochet, African futuristic, all of that. Just so all those different concepts and whatnot was like, and then I try to like infuse it in a way that makes sense and doesn't become convoluted.
Right, yeah, that's definitely a creative control element because you have a lot of different elements just popping in your mind and the way to be able to control it, to come up with that. Do women bring you shoes or do you make shoes? And
both of us happen. Both of us happen. Definitely they have brought me their pairs. And like one thing I would tell the sisters that would commission a pair of shoes is like, please bring me. I know women have 1,010,000 shoes in their closet. There gotta be one pair that's like in the back, way in the back, that's comfortable, but you ain't using it no more. You know what I mean? So pull it out, let me turn it into something like this, and then give it a whole another 20 years of life.
That puts a whole new tack on sustainability because we all talk about sustainability, and wanting to, have garments that last, and we want to work in materials that last, but then our own closets are just not a nod to sustainability other than the fact that we've just been this stuff's been sitting there forever. That's one way of making things sustainable, you just don't use it. But, when you're able to take, pieces that, customers don't use and then just give them a whole new life, which I think is just fab. I think that's just fabulous. Are your customers mostly men, women, or both?
They used to be mostly women.
Used to be?
Yeah, majority women. Like it's kind of like shifting now,
Oh, okay.
Because even the times now, men are a lot more comfortable in their skin, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're taking a little bit more risk. You can even go into the men's department now. You're seeing a lot of
Floral
pinks
prints and
flowers in the shirts and whatnot. You're like, Before it just used to be blue, and green, a little bit of brown, some khaki. That's it. Like, can I get a yellow shirt? A yellow shirt? No, nothing. Okay. So it'd be a lot of that, So now in this day and age, like people are definitely getting a lot more comfortable in their skin, and they're moving accordingly. So a nice sweater ain't gonna throw them off that much anymore. You know what I mean? And to be quite frank, a lot of people in my neighborhood growing up, their sweater game came from Polo, Ralph Lauren. That was their sweater game.
Yeah.
Remember one time I was in the studio, the infamous studio. I was in the studio again with one of my jackets on, and one of the guys in them who is from that whole world, the low-life world with the polos, big teddy bears and the whole nine, he rolled up on me and was like, yo bro, that's one of them new low-life joints, bro. It's like, nah, that's that new NASAC. What's up? What's going on with you? He's like, yeah, son, I thought that was one of them $5,000 jackets. I was like, but he just goes to show you where his headspace is. His headspace is on like what Polo. It had that branding association with it. Like, all right, Polo means that it could be $5,000. It's like I guarantee you the process that he went to making that polo jacket and the process he went to making this jacket, yeah.
It's not the same.
Nah.
No,
Like
my
a
jacket's
machine made this
refined.
situation.
Exactly.
I spent hours with my hands and hooks creating the situation. You know, so hands down, I'd say it's like two different worlds, but just goes to show, man, that brand recognition is powerful.
You know, and I think what's equally powerful, though, you know, is the attraction of something that is not brand recognized.
Exactly.
You know, because no one ever comes up to you and says, wow, that's a nice Gucci. When you have something on that's original and that people haven't seen before, the first thing everyone says is, where did you get it?
Yeah, what's that?
They never, because they can't even, a store can't even pop into their mind in terms of what, you know, where they got it from, you know. And I think this is where, you know, makers, you know, like yourself, you know, I used to have a button that said, you know, laugh now, but one day we'll be in charge, that I would wear. And what would happen is that, you know, people see makers like yourself, and then, you know, they surreptitiously take a photo, and then you're back in the design studio, and then like, you know, how can we make this without people recognizing that we stole it?
I've seen that already.
You know?
I've experienced that. Like when I just started making these boots and whatnot, like I ain't even gonna call their name, but they took a stab at it. I saw them out there in the world. They black people too. They black folk. They took a stab at it. I was like, you're taking a stab at it and y'all ain't even gonna holler at the kid? It's foul! But then, you know, years later, it kind of just went, I was like, see, if I was on the staff, I could have helped y'all with the situation, be the situation.
Exactly.
You know? Nah, that wasn't that's my homie.
You know,
what's some other folk?
Well, let's talk how does one stay fresh? You know, in the age of social media now, because of, you know, originality has become very relative, you know, in the age of social media. You know, I found as a designer, for me, it separates the people that only have one idea that they think is going to take over the world, and when they find out that it's not an original idea, they're kind of sunk. And then there's the folks who have just, you know, whose heads are pouring out with ideas, where you can look in your old sketchbooks and still bring back stuff.
Yes,
so, you know, what's the challenge for you? And because I notice you don't have, you know, it's not about the 10,000 followers. And I tell people it's about the quality, you know, not the numbers. But you don't have the 10,000 followers. You don't use, like, you know, 20 hashtags. There isn't this whole, like, you know, there's this whole movement to get thousands of people, you know, or to copy. And so how do you stay fresh throughout all of that?
I remain myself. I stay organic and authentic to who I am. I've never been the one to try and chase after anything. Like growing up, my parents always told me, like, what's for you is for you. You know what I mean? Like, what's yours, that's yours. It's God-given right that it's yours. You know what I mean? Like, nobody can take that from you. So if you're walking with that type of energy, that type of thought process and awareness within yourself, like, you're not shaken by any of the madness that may be going on out there.
And I think that's a good thing to have also when you come from a culture that has a large cultural and design reference, you know, where you can pull upon that, which helps in originality. And I want to know, you know, because all of this is also not just coming from things that pop in. How much is the culture? How much does the Africa culture? How much does Dominica culture inform what you're doing, even if it's on a very subliminal level, where you may not even feel it, but you just feel through the movement of your hands or your choice of colors that what's reaching out through you is reaching out from a culture that dates back maybe thousands of years.
Most definitely. Like I feel it, to be honest with you. I literally feel it. Like it's always been something in my mind that the stuff that I create, like I see through a scope of ancient futurism. That's how my general scope on the world is. So everything, all my aesthetics, everything has ancient energy rooted in, you know, the core principles of life and a futuristic vision for how I see myself, how I see things, you know what I mean? So kind of like the Flintstones and George Jetson.
Great.
You know, on the continent of Africa.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Do you use the influence of other cultures in your work as well?
Definitely. Because you know, I definitely see the world as like a big cultural pot. You know, like we all have a different type of spice to add to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, some days I might like some salt, some days I might like some chili, some days I might like some moringa. You know, it all depends on. So I definitely draw from it all. I draw from it all. I know who I am. I pay very close attention to it. But I draw from it all, man. I draw from it all.
Mm.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So what do you, in terms of the future, what do you see happening in terms of your work, and what kind of directions would you like to go in now with it, and where do you want to take where do you want to take your work?
So for years I've been brainstorming and creating a crochet machine. To facilitate this crochet wild dreams that we have.
Well, there is a knitting machine, so
I see the knitting machine.
Yeah, I own 3 of them.
And I've been asking engineers for years, like, yo, y'all can replicate this whole dynamic right here.
That's interesting.
None so far, but that's something that I want to go ahead and explore. See if I could be the guy to create this whole crochet machine on the planet, and help out the thousands of other crocheters and see things in the way that I see.
It was
things.
more incomplete projects.
Yeah, you know.
We can now start the machine.
I mean, to be honest, if there was a machine that I could like type in my idea and just program it and hit send and come out with one of these situations, that would make my life. I mean, listen, I'll be able to get out all the ideas, like every last one of them. I have thousands of ideas. Like if I could just design it real quick on a computer screen and hit send, and voila. Yeah.
Well, let's see. Well, there's other. Well, until that point.
Until the year 2050.
Until that point, there's other alternatives in terms of creation. And one of those is, what seems to be very popular at the moment is collaboration. It's another word you're hearing thrown around. We're collaborating with this person, we're collaborating with that person. Have you been approached about any creative collaboration?
I have, but it gets weird.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not opposed, but it just gets weird. Like, a lot of times, their language and my language doesn't necessarily match.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, they would love what I do and I would love what they do, but then together, like, case in point, like I met somebody at Shishama when I did the residency this summer, right? She's a Korean designer, and she was doing her residency, and she was about to go to Paris to do this fashion show, so she's making pieces and whatnot. And she wanted to try in some way, shape, or form, because she just loved my work, to incorporate what I do into her designs and try and have like a collaborative situation to put out into the world. On paper it seemed fantastic. Mm-hmm. It seemed like a great thing to do. But in the actual reality of working the pieces and then trying to fuse the 2 different languages together,
right.
It didn't necessarily, it wasn't communicating right.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we ended up not going through with that particular project, but we stayed in contact, we did other things since then, but it didn't necessarily fuse.
Yeah.
Right, you know what I mean? And I know my language is it's weird. It's a weird language. Like, it's not necessarily, like, you see it and you understand it, but you can't necessarily interpret it. So it kind of throws people off. Like, I see what you're doing, but how did you do that?
Right.
So that aspect right there kind of throws it off. But I'm always down to collaborate in all kinds of different ways, shape, and
Well, what would be your ideal collaboration? Like, what do you look for in terms of a collaboration? Because for myself, it's been problematic in the sense that I was taught that the collaboration was usually 50-50. Now companies come and want to collaborate, and you have to decide whether or not it is a collaboration or if you're another form of employee or contract, because there's a difference in that language, so that people need to be aware of. So that said, what would be, an ideal collaboration?
An ideal collaboration for me at this juncture would be with Virgil. I want to work with Virgil Abloh.
Okay,
I think
fantastic.
he's very, like, in the trajectory and direction that I want to go with my work. I like his path.
Right.
I mean, so there are a lot of things that I see he has done, steps and stages. I would like to work in that particular manner.
Would Pyre Moss be someone as well?
Higher.
Pyre Moss, yeah, he just had a fashion show in Brooklyn for Fashion Week. He's been pretty major, and his work looks pretty, his work was pretty good, yeah, it's pretty futuristic. Because I definitely see a futuristic element, in all of your work. I went to see the Pierre Cardin show at the Brooklyn Museum, and it was interesting watching the expressions of all the younger people who thought they were original. So they went to that show, and then they came out like, I'm never going to make another garment. I'm done. I can't think of it. He thought of it all, But, and he's another person, another designer I admired in the time who actually, carved out his own path and used materials that weren't even thought about in the 60s and all yet, when everyone was decreeing like his use of plastic, thermoplastics in garments. So, that was really something to see. But I see the futuristic element in your garments and all as well. But, so Virgil, if you get to see this, holla. Holla, Virgil.
Looking to collaborate.
Holla.
Yeah, man. So definitely, that brother, I like what he's doing. For years, like, my brothers have been telling me, like, I need to collaborate with Kanye. That's like, you and Kanye would do so. Yeah. I was like, yeah, I feel you. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's get out in the world.
Take people's suggestions.
Yeah, I definitely felt him on that. I was like, yeah, I can see that, man, because his mind he got one of those whimsical, creative minds. That's like my favorite type of exchange. I like the real whimsical, creative artists. Like, let's get crazy with it. Let's go.
Do you see any work, that there's tons of crocheters that love your work. Do you see yourself at this particular point designing a jacket or a garment to go into a crochet magazine, or to put out patterns for, for those of us who, who want to form, but we're not quite ready for the color, I just want my version of his work.
I'm with it. Like, that's something that I've been exploring as of late, and it's taken me a while even to process that particular aspect of it, just because of the way that I work, right?
I see. Yes.
So it's like having to stop in the middle of my creating to write down a pattern. That throws off my particular rhythm.
Right.
So it's something that I had to learn. So now I try to do it a couple ways. I try to, like, make the entire piece and then backtrack and go read the pattern based upon what I made. That right there was arduous. I was like, man, listen. Counting stitches, like, okay, let's start back again. Like, when you got something that's like thousands of stitches, like, you're gonna lose count somewhere on the situation. So next thing I try to, like, just literally go along with it. Like, after one row.
Oh my God.
Number. Row 2. That just doesn't work for my creative process.
Okay.
So for years, I've had to, like, battle with that particular pattern. People are like, yo, Nas, I asked you for this pattern like 17 years ago. I'm like, that's not even my fault, my brother. Like, I would love to give you this pattern, but just mentally, it's not even, I could make the jacket, like, with my eyes closed. But to tell you, like, yo, okay, so 117 stitches this way, and
then I guess maybe your work would definitely not be for a beginner.
And another thing, that's another thing, right? So crochet, I would take it as with any other art form, is a series of basic steps. Everything is a series of basic steps, right? You start, all these gigantic pieces that you see out there, all has started with one stitch. Start with a chain stitch, and then you keep working, you keep building, you keep building. So it's nothing magical. The magic comes from the creativity. But the actual locomotion of creating the pieces is real rudimentary. We just going through motions, going through motions, going through motions. So anytime when I'm doing classes or anything of the sort, I always stress the basics of the technique. You learn the basics of the technique, then you could create any of these things, right? So it's not, I wouldn't say it's difficult. Maybe the advanced step may come from just understanding how it all goes together, but there's nothing difficult about the pieces.
I'm thinking then in terms of patterning, it may be an idea to just give people the stitches you used and the shape. Like the sleeves did this, the front did that, and then they can just have a guide as opposed to that row by row set of instructions. They could maybe get a guide. It may not come out exactly like what you're having, but they'll get a close enough version that they, can utilize.
But I'm definitely going to create a pattern for a basic jacket, so it'll be the shapes, and then you can use that as your template to splash it in whatever color.
Yeah, because crochet, as opposed to knitting and other mediums, crochet is one of the is a medium that you can work that kind of free form. You can follow a drawn template and crochet to the shape and follow it in a way that's I look at crochet directions and sometimes my eyes just cross, Whereas if I look at the piece, it's easy for me to figure out the piece.
Yeah, definitely. I am thirsty to get to the motherland. Like I can feel it. Like the underbelly people, like their work speaks to me. You know what I mean? Very much so. The Omo tribe, their work speaks to me big time. Like the Northern Sudan, like all the different cultures that have very vibrant colors and a lot of geometrical shapes and patterns, like their work speaks to me loudly. So anytime I see them, I'm like, wow. And those things, obviously get downloaded. And then this happens.
Yeah. Anyone else? Well, I have a quick question.
Yes.
One last question. How have you, we talked about men seeing you crochet and the hardness and all. It hasn't stopped you. I wonder out loud, how many young men have you influenced to crochet, either through your teaching, at the studio, or people seeing you? How many guys now are like to start, or even younger men, and boys who are saying like, wow, I could do that.
Yeah, and even the words coming out of their mouth.
They can say the word
They can
crochet.
say crochet. There's no qualms without it feeling like it just wasn't even a part of their vocabulary. They might not even have had a stigma on it. It just wasn't even in their vocabulary to say crochet. It's just like it rolls off the tongue funny. It was like, but they see the work that, and one thing I would say, they see the work that I do. They see the finished product, and the finished product is what speaks to them. Because I'm of the hip hop generation, hip hop culture, reggae, raga, island roots culture. So those things inform my style. So that be the style, and then this be the medium to translate the style. So then they see that and they be like, okay, I get you, I got you. And it's like a big testing ground was definitely East New York and Brownsville. There's a different edge over there with the young men. They mentally, it's a different dynamic going on over there, So being able to break through whatever little fake facade that might be set up and see them have a genuine interest in the work,
And then the math is going to get them too, because once they see the math,
they swear they're little hustlers, so they're all about the numbers. They're all about, yeah, how much is that? 15, yeah, I got you. 28, yeah, I got you. 16, yeah, I got you. So they're about their math. They spit that bad boy out with the quickness. So it ain't going to be nothing for them. And it's like one of the hardest young men, like one of the young men in our program that is, he definitely, he's been going through some stuff, to say the least. You know what I mean? So he has real edge on him. Real edge, young man, 16 years old. But when I showed him to do the God's Eye, he came back with the best one in the class. Out of all the other people in the class, he's the one that took his time and meticulously wrapped that bad boy to the T.
It took him away from
You feel me? I was like, you see what I'm saying? So there are like a lot of jewels and magic that our kids have, but it might not be exposed if they don't have an example. So I'll
the example. Okay. With that,
Appreciate it. Thank you.